I will not risk open war.
Open war is upon you, whether you would risk it or not.
Hello again. This is Umbra, Lord of the Rees, Master of Autism, and the Scourge of Chicken Tendies. Thank you for anyone returning for a second unprompted autistic rant, and for those coming for the first time, I would humbly ask that you like and subscribe, if you feel that I have earned it at the very least. Today, I wanted to broach a subject that is quite divisive. It's a highly tribalized issue and becoming, frankly, impossible to remain neutral in. I think, like a majority of people, I don't really have a side. For the most part, I'm only really interested in anime titties and good stories in my games. As you know, the plot is very important. Regardless, I, like many others, and probably you watching, come to our games to unwind. To play a game and escape the madness that the world has become, even if only for a few hours. Except, for some reason, now when a new game comes out, it's always a darn circus. Toxic insert convenient noun here, as well as whatever else they want to throw at it, whatever the flavor of the month happens to be. It's hard to escape from the madness without completely deleting your social media and going full digital hermit. And even then, you find out that they censored your game anyway. Or they add some toxic Big Brother moderation that people never wanted. Just what the hell is going on? I'm not advocating for capital P politics. I really couldn't care less who you vote for, and whatever have you, honestly. The topic of this discussion is not about elections or anything like that. I'm not advocating for a political position, at least not in the conventional sense. Frankly, I wouldn't even be in this had I not been forced into it. The truth of it, dear viewer, is that open war is upon us, whether we want it or not. And as I will explain in a bit, we are not allowed to be neutral, nor are we allowed to be uninvolved. So, what is the culture war? The culture war, as they call it, is a long war, one that honestly predates the Cold War. To go into the minute details would be essentially giving a college-level lecture, and frankly, I want to keep this as digestible as possible. What I am calling out doesn't really specifically belong to any side, as both quote-unquote sides have in their time pushed morality policing. Yesteryear, it was what Americans colloquially call the right. Christian conservative busybodies, burning records as well as burning books, the Satanic Panic, and the Jack Thompson era left a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to what I will refer to as the right. I say this because I frankly don't care what someone's political allegiance is. If I see someone acting in this manner, I'm going to take a metaphorical swing. Right now we see the same mentality, what people now call woke in the modern context. Let's make no bones about it. The right did the exact same thing the left is now doing when they had the cultural control and power. Yet, it's kind of strange that even though their ideology is opposed to the other, here they are doing the same exact things, except creating new phrases like safe horny to badly disguise their hypocrisy. It's such a huge push, and yet, why gaming? Why is it so important for them to push their ideology into gaming with a zeal eclipsing that of some religions? To understand that, you need to think about your daily life. Have you ever wondered why movies nowadays just don't seem to have any edge to them, even when just compared to movies 10 years ago? Have you ever wondered why they're going out of their way retconning characters as different races and sexualities as opposed to creating new ones, even though shows and characters of those things have existed for decades? Well, it's the ideological equivalent of raising a flag over a conquered fortress. It's not that it's meant to sell better or anything like that, but to proclaim the capture of territory. So how does this relate to gaming, and why is the fight so fierce? The answer is that if there is any aspect of culture that is not actively espousing their ideology, they will inevitably fail to gain total cultural control. They are playing a zero-sum game. That's why you might think of yourself as being left-leaning or moderately liberal, as I did, and find yourself painted as far-right just for questioning something, let alone disagree with it. Dear Lord, if you disagree with it. The ideology is such that it believes the only outcomes are either total victory or total defeat. The purpose of this video is not to explain what people call woke ideology. That is a soup sandwich that I will try to nail to the wall at another day. So, why gaming? Looking at the current situation, it seems strange. Why are anime titties or silly video games such a threat to them? I mean, it's clearly not an issue with lewdness, as the reactions from that side were positive for the infamous bare sex scene in Baldur's Gate 3 or the gratuitous non-binary sex scene in Neil Druckmann's The Last of Us 2. To understand this, we have to go back to 2014. Yes, that thing in 2014. When a bunch of autists decided they didn't like what was happening in gaming media. To explain Gamergate would take hours of going through receipts and explaining connections that would make me look like Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I have first-hand knowledge of the situation, so I will be speaking from that experience. I have a few great breakdowns of the subject in the description of this video if you want to delve deeper into that, or you could wait for me to eventually release a video on it. Gamergate was an apolitical consumer revolt against games journalism websites that had been caught trading favors for positive coverage. To keep the overview brief, the groups used their identities and identity politics as a shield, claiming that criticism of their actions was the same as hate for their identity. The fact that the group of people protesting were varied from all walks of life and backgrounds was treated as an inconvenient detail and swept under the rug. Why am I even talking about Gamergate? Well, it's because they haven't. They haven't stopped talking about it. A little consumer revolt that petered out around a year and a half from when it started, and yet articles about it would come out even up to the most recent SBI detected situation. Some people are even calling it Gamergate 2. Another topic for another day, I suppose. So why is it that it was mentioned so much and trotted out like Christmas decorations every now and then? That's because it scared them, but not for the reasons they will admit. Why are they so afraid of you? The answer I have come to, and I want you, my friends, to consider for yourselves, is as follows. They have to capture everything to force the change they want. Movies, comics, heck, even your jobs are now parroting their ideology. Who has had to sit through an hour-long lecture at work about diversity and sensitivity while people drone on about nonsense that makes no sense? It comes to cultural capture. When a group or ideology wishes to make itself the dominant one and to secure power for itself, it occurs in 3 stages. The first and most important is a cultural capture. Essentially, get so many people that believe in your ideology that the ideology becomes the consensus. This would be your comic shops, your film clubs, your tabletop groups and fandoms. The second part is to capture the institutions. In other mediums, this has been the order of the day. The usage of the bots and the design of the ideology creating a forced consensus to shout down the people who may object. Then the institutions are seized and made to parrot the ideology through either outnumbering the original institutional culture, threats, or outright capitulation due to greed. The last stage involves the original fans who refuse to be converted being routed from their communities or fandoms, adrift and unable to enjoy the things they had loved, and often either enjoying new fandoms or just being so blackpilled they stop caring about much of anything. Sound familiar? I'm sure you've seen this pattern play out in something you've enjoyed, or at least parts of it. So what does this have to do with Gamergate and gaming? Look no further than the Gamers Are Dead articles from a decade ago. A concerted effort was made to break the identity of quote-unquote gaming culture. I do not want to say too much about why their efforts failed, only that, while Gamergate did not accomplish what it wanted to, it did something very important. The proof is in what we are seeing now. Gaming culture over the past 10 years really hasn't changed much. Meanwhile, many of the same game journalists and people pushing the ideology worked themselves into positions of power within the institutions. People like Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian even got invited to speak at the UN. The connection between them and the current situation would take too long to make the video digestible, so I will recommend some further things to look into in the description. They got into the gaming companies themselves through various means and have captured the institutions, which has been made easier by the consolidation of gaming publishers with all the big purchases we've seen over the past few years. This, however, could not get them what they truly wanted, as the likes of Steam still allow for distribution of indie products in a more mainstream way than comics or movies really had, allowing for a thriving culture outside of the institutions' controlled ecosystems. And this situation of cultural capture with control of the institutions but not of the culture, it becomes an occupation, not a revolution. Gamergate stuck in their nightmares as a boogeyman because they knew their control was not complete, and with enough lashback, they could be overthrown. So I know what you're thinking. I really don't want to pick a side. Honestly, I don't want to pick a side either. More or less, if I was just allowed to play my anime waifu games, I wouldn't be bothered to make this video. Frankly, I have better things to do. However, I know that I have two options. Against an opponent that is viewing it as a zero-sum game, there's always only two options: resistance or subjugation. If it hasn't come for your favorite things yet, it will. And like a vampire, it will keep coming until you have nothing left. I've chosen resistance. I refuse to give in. That is one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel, because we need to raise our voices. If not, the two extremes will be the only voices. And I don't much like the idea of a repeat of the Satanic Panic, much more than this weird leftist and in many cases Marxist cult. And if that sounds hyperbolic, well, I've got a lot of receipts otherwise. But if those of us who are sane and balanced, with the understanding that the world doesn't need to be all black and white, don't speak up, this situation won't stop until we make it stop. I hope this video has been informative for you. It's something that means a lot to me because gaming has always been not only an escape for me, but also a link to friends of all types from areas around the world. I would preserve it if I could. If you like my rant, thought my ideas were interesting, or just had something you wanted to say, I encourage you to pop into the comments. If you have counterpoints or disagreements, I welcome those as well. Liking or subscribing goes a long way as I continue to muse on the state of gaming. And as always, remember, passion is nothing to be ashamed of.